Today I'm going to present my view on Bluest Eye as a post-colonial literature. Next slide. The Bluest Eye, published in 1970 in the first novel written by Toni Morrison, the novel takes place in Loren, Ohio, and tells the story of a young African American girl named Piccola who grew up following the Great Depression. In the US in the 1940s, the little daughter of poor black family Piccola prays God every night for her eyes to be blue. According to her, if her eyes were blue, she would be a very beautiful girl. Her father would stop drinking and not beat her mother. Her brother would not escape from the house. Everything in Piccola's life would change. Piccola's backs got to have white skin and blue eyes. Throughout the novel, it is understood that not only Piccola but her parents also had a distort the difficult life. This painful life extinguished the love that once existed between them, and set the ground for frequent discussion that led to physical violence. The culmination of the violence is where when her father Charlie rapes Piccola and impregnates her. The reason behind the rape is vague and complex. It is probably a combination of sense of worthlessness and self-hatred. This tragic rape incident is turning point of Piccola, whose life is already so adverse. Her self-hatred depends. Uh, at the at the end of the novel, Piccola goes mad. There are two reasons for this. The first is that the desire of identification of being white with beauty. Whiteness is a standard that black will never have. The situation is even more desperate and grave, especially for Piccola, who is even more black than the other. Piccola always associated beauty with love. According to her, if her skin was white, her eyes were blue, she would love very much, and all the negativity in her life would be replaced by beauties. It is not her own view of beauty. Blacks have such a great respect for being white that Piccola calls whiteness as the essence of beauty. The bluest eye is a striking description of racism and consequent psychological destruction. White people created such a perception that when black people look at a white person, they see their own ugliness. Beauty is a concept created by Western and white people. Not only Piccola and Pauline, but all the female characters in the novel suffer in many different ways. First, black women are despised by white society, and they are exposed to both physical and psychological. Next, one of the biggest crises in Pauline's life was the day Piccola was born. When Pauline first saw Piccola, she thought that she was very ugly. Pauline has developed a hatred for her since the day she gave birth to Piccola. On the same day, Pauline experienced inequality in the hospital. Offensive words were spoken by the doctor when he got to me. He said, "Now this year woman you do not have any trouble with. They deliver right away with no pain, just like horses." These words hurt and shocked her. She was not treated as a human being because of her skin color. This race discrimination was very humiliating for Pauline. The double oppression experienced by a black woman in the bluest eye is in the novel. Black women are both ostracized by the white community and by men in their own black community. Therefore, they experience double oppression. This situation led to a mental breakdown for them. The issue for race, gender, and class created by the white world were issues that black women had to struggle with. These three major problems illustrate the traumatic conditions they experienced in white America. Women's character life was full of torture, while white women are so victim of social judgment. The situation of black women has always been worse. Pauline cannot show love and affection to her children. According to Colin, Pauline has risen for far too many black mothers. The demand of providing for children are so demanding that affection must often wait until the basic need of physical survival are satisfied. Struggling for survival with the problems such as the pressure, class differences, racial and gender issues, Pauline fight both with her husband and with the white community. Women are not only subject to racial but also gender discrimination. The behavior expected from women and men in society are different. In the word, the gender perception of the society determines male and female behavior. Piccola's brother Sammy and his attitude toward his parents is another example of gender in bluest eye. While Piccolo must stay at home, Sammy is able to resist and leave home. He curses for a while. He cursed for a while and left the house or threw himself into the fray. Piccolo, on the other hand, restricted by youth and sex, experimented with method of according to his this is a male privilege, and which can be seen in the opposition which it sustains itself between activity and passivity. At point out, men are active and women are passive. One of the narrator of the novel, Claudia, tells the woman as the victim, suffering in silence because of the discrimination created by white society, especially male. Black women judge themselves based on the form of appearance constructed by society, which makes them feel inferior. Next, Queen Bee syndrome in the Bluest Eye. In the blue in the Queen Bee syndrome, to be a woman who hold power to classify another woman in terms of weakness, according to Maven, the Queen Bee is commonly constructed as a bitch boosting other women in the power of threaten, and a concept of the Queen Bee blames individual woman for not supporting other. In the woman and the female character in the novel not only suffered from racial harassment but also from oppression and abuses of the male dominant society. As if that were not enough, some women face additional oppression from the hierarchical system led by the queen bee. Piccola's mother Pauline may be given as the one of the best example of women who have been syndrome, and Piccola is exposed to unjust treatment even by her mother. Pauline always beats her. Even the black mother, Pauline, acts as an oppressive white and despise her black child. Pauline feels aliened from society. She is surprised to see the strange behavior of other women and feels worthless. Feeling this way, she hates her daughter Piccola. She turns into a person who cannot love and is afraid to show love. When Piccola was raped by her father, she was treated hostile by her mother. At first, she only feels bewilderment, and she realizes her mother is not going to believe her when she tells her. Pauline does not believe Piccola, and Piccola is raped again. As Piccola struggles with her feeling her mother hates her, she sees Piccola as a threat because she is pregnant by her husband. As a result, Pauline develops a queen bee syndrome in terms of social construct and self-hatred. Next. The bluest eye, the bluest eye and the Western beauty standard throughout history. The concept of beauty has always been based on the value of a dominant culture. The main reason for the ever-changing concept of being beauty imperialism. The West perception of beauty has uniform standard. Only white, tall, blue-eyed, and skinny women are beautiful. In the bluest eye, female characters are influenced by this image because they do not have Western beauty standard. They hate themselves, and their only goal in life is to be like a wife because being white means being beautiful. The protagonist Piccola Breedlove eventually drifts into madness because of her obsession with blue eyes. Woman, the female character in the novel, not only suffered from racial harassment but also from the operation of abuses the male dominant society. The novel ends with a conversation between Piccola and her imaginary friend. They are having conversation about Piccola's blue eyes. The only concern of Piccola is that if there is someone who has more beautiful or bluer eyes than her. Next, male dominant society is that women must adapt to survive under the pressure of never ending hierarchy, and they need to create themselves every day and each second to exist in this unmerciful world. In Toni Morrison's Bluest Eye, the passive resistance of women toward men is primary topic throughout the entire story. In the novel, especially black women are always considered as the second sex. The dominant white male hegemony kept its power. Burger start in the ways of saying the surveyor of woman is in herself is made the surveyed female. Thus she turns herself into an object and most an object of reason. A side mention about the oppression of women. All women in the novel are potential prey of men because they are not safe in sexist society where they are seen as a commodities. These traumas are at the female character have been gone through reflect their life. There is a such brutal white society and men of this society that black female are susceptible to all type of oppression. And The Bluest Eye by Toni Morrison is a story of young black girl Piccola Bridlow who lives in a society which does not offer reflection of her beauty and subjectivity. This study tries to examine the novel based on theories of post-structuralist critic Homike Bhabha. In his work, Bhabha challenges the notion of fixed identities, undermines the binary opposition between colonized and colonizer, and emphasized the role of discourse and language in identity formation of both colonizer and the colonized. Three concepts, including stereotype, uncanny, and mimicry, are applied to this novel by Toni Morrison. Next. Mimicry has to be described as the ambivalent relationship between colonizer and colonized. When colonial discourse forced the colonized to emulate the colonizer value, behavior, habits, and assumption, the result is not simple copy of those traits. This mimicry, which is the fact of mockery, can be quite threatening to the colonized. This term has been crucial to Bhabha's view of colonial discourse as ambivalence. Bhabha believes that mimicry creates colonized subjects that are almost the same but not quite. The consequence of this post-colonial study are quite profound for what emerges through the flow in colonial power is waiting. That is post-colonial writing, the ambi- ambivalence of which is menacing the colonial authority. That menace of mimicry does not lie in its concealment of some real identity behind its marks, but comes from its double reason, which is disclosing ambivalence of colonial discourse also disrupt the authority. Talking about stereotype, Bhabha discussed that anxiety inherent in colonial relationship opens a space for colonized to resist colonial discourse. This anxiety is matched with mimicry as well. The adopting and adapting of the colonizer's culture, assumption, behavior, and value. This imitation is a repetition with difference. Mimicry in general is one response to the crucial of stereotype. Bhabha explained mimicry in the way colonial mimicry is the desire for a reform recognizable author as a subject of difference that is almost the same but not quite, which is to say that discourse of mimicry constructed around in order to be effective, mimicry must continuously produce its slippage, it access its difference. And Bhabha explained that essentially colonial discourse want the colonized to be extremely like the colonizer, but by no means identical. If there were an absolute equivalence between the two, then the ideologies justifying colonial rule would be able to operate. This is because these ideologies assume that there are structural non-equivalence, a split between superior and inferior, which explain why any one group of people can dominate another at all. Aspiration of merging into white society is the perfect manifestation of mimicry, or better to say, mockery, de emphasizing her African roots. Guerrilla tries to dissolve into American society when she calls Piccola, who was the target of her son's negative behavior, a nasty little black bitch. She is demonstrating her desire to be what she really not. The Bluest Eye Piccola Breedlove is the protagonist of the story, and her life, a damaged girl who desperately desires pair of blue eyes. The idea of unhomeliness offered by Homi Bhabha is really accommodating to the Bluest Eye story, and this paper tries to apply this concept of the story. Unhomeliness is not about being physically homeless. According to Bhabha, the unhomely moment creep upon you stealthily as your own shadow, and you find yourself in taste of incredulous terror. This unhomeliness is a colonial and post-colonial condition, and its resonance can be heard in old cold greenhouse of Claudia MacTid or Piccola burnt down house. In fact, you hear it when Claudia, now an adult, tries to speak unspoken, the unspoken story of all the fall, the story of marigold which never grew, and the story of an ugly little black girl who desired a pair of blue eyes. This exploration of Toni Morrison's Bluest Eye in the post-colonial framework was the main concern in this study. In this study, it is attempted by deconstruct the binary opposition between the colonized and the colonizer based on theory on uncanny stereotype and mimicry proposed by Homike Bhabha. First, the concept of stereotype discussed to clarify the anxious relationship between colonized and the colonizer and how scopic drafts play a significant role in forming stereotype. Second, the idea of mimicry or slight civility was applied to the bluest eye to represent the colonized mockery of the colonizer dominance, and at last, unhomely or uncanny elements of novel were enumerated. The whole study tried to show the unhomely nature of the colonial world, and it affect both colonized and colonizers. Study shows that the simple polarization of the self and other impossible and underneath it in the opposition there is a complex mutual relationship. Next, the white male established his hierarchy over the white woman and African American woman. Toni Morrison's work can be considered in the post-colonial feminist context. This context is apparent in Morrison's Bluest Eye. The novel also considered as the post-slavery period, and it affects as well rape and incest. Okay, next. Thank you. And next slide is about my references.
Okay. Questions?
Yes, Viral, what are the basic themes of post-colonial literature?
Post-colonial has many common motifs and themes like cultural dominance, racism, quest of identity, inequality, along with some presentation styles. Most of the post-colonial writers reflect and demonstrated many thematic concepts which are quite connected with both colonizer and colonized.
Okay, my question is, what is the real example of post-colonialism?
Uh, Real example of post-colonialism. The British had a colonial presence in India from the 1770s until India gained its independence in 1947. As you can imagine, the people of India, as well as the character in Indian novels, must deal with the economic, political, and emotional effect that the British brought and left behind.